doors weren't always rectangular. The shocking first entry. Imagine walking into a building today, almost without thinking. Your hand reaches for a rectangular door. It's such a normal, everyday thing that it feels eternal, as though doors have always been this way. But what if I told you that for most of human history, doors didn't look anything like the rectangular slabs we now push, pull, or slide? The first entries to human spaces were shocking in their design, function, and symbolism. They weren't always about easy access. They were about survival, spirituality, and social order. In the earliest human shelters, there were no doors in the sense we think of today. Ancient caves or primitive huts often had openings, but these were small, irregular holes cut or left in the structure. Imagine crouching low, squeezing through a circular or oval-shaped hole in order to protect your family from the cold winds or lurking predators. Entryways were about keeping things out, not letting people flow in and out with convenience. These early doors looked more like defensive burrows than passageways. As humans transitioned into building permanent homes during the Neolithic period, the design of entryways began to evolve. In Cataluyuk, one of the world's oldest cities in modern-day Turkey, people didn't even enter their homes through walls. Instead, they climbed down ladders through holes in the roofs. To us, it sounds bizarre. Imagine entering your house like descending into a bunker butt. For them, it was both practical and secure. The roof entry protected them from wild animals and intruders, and it also helped with temperature control in the scorching summers and freezing winters. Doors as rectangles on the side of a building were still a long way off. When doorways did begin to appear on walls, their shapes weren't always rectangular. Some of the earliest constructed doors in ancient Mesopotamia and Egypt were actually round or arched. These shapes were inspired by the circular huts and domes of early architecture. The idea of a doorway being circular wasn't just functional, it also carried symbolic meaning. Circles were seen as symbols of eternity and the universe. Passing through a circular door could mean more than just entering a room. It was a transition into a protected, sacred space. In ancient Egypt, stone doors carved for tombs often mimicked the shape of portals to the afterlife. These weren't functional doors, but spiritual ones. Rectangular in some cases, but also arched or oddly shaped. Designed to represent the threshold between the world of the living and the world of the dead. To step through was not just physical light, was cosmic. Even in early European architecture, doors came in surprising shapes. Some megalithic tombs in Ireland and Britain featured triangular or trapezoidal entrances. Imagine walking into a wedge-shaped doorway, its narrowing frame forcing you to duck as if bowing before entering a sacred chamber. Entryways were often intentionally uncomfortable. They reminded people that they were crossing into a space of importance. So why did doors eventually settle into the familiar rectangular form we know today? The answer lies in practicality. As civilizations grew more advanced, buildings became larger and more complex. Rectangles with their straight lines were easier to cut from stone and wood, easier to hang on hinges, and more efficient to produce on a large scale. The rectangular shape also made doors more stable, less likely to warp, and able to open and close smoothly within a frame. In other words, rectangles were simply more functional for growing cities and societies. The Romans, great pioneers of architecture, were some of the first to normalize rectangular doors. Their engineering prowess extended to door mechanisms as well. They invented double doors, sliding doors, and even folding doors, all of which worked best when constructed in rectangular form. For them, doors weren't just entrances, they were statements of power. A massive rectangular doorway into a basilica or temple signified grandeur and authority. To pass through such a door was to step into the domain of empire and law. In the Middle Ages, the symbolism of doors took on new meanings. Cathedral doors were often tall, rectangular, and intricately carved, designed to inspire awe. But even then, you could find some surprising shape-arched Gothic doors, circular rose openings, and even tiny side doors called wickets that forced individuals to bow before entering a holy place. The shape of a doorway still carried cultural and spiritual weight. It wasn't until the Renaissance and Industrial Revolution that doors began to fully standardize. With advances in carpentry and mass production, rectangular doors became the default. Their shape fits seamlessly into the new grid-like style of architecture that dominated cities and homes. A rectangle was efficient, symmetrical, and easy to replicate qualities that matched the values of an increasingly industrialized world. By the 19th and 20th centuries, rectangular doors were no longer just practical, they were cultural defaults. But the story doesn't end there. Even today, not all doors are rectangular. In Japan, traditional shoji screens slide open with rectangular symmetry. But torii gates, the symbolic doors of Shinto shrines, retain unique shapes, representing transitions between the ordinary and the sacred. In parts of India and Nepal, arched or circular doors remain part of cultural design, reflecting ancient spiritual symbolism. In modern architecture, designers sometimes experiment with oval, circular, or triangular doors as a nod to history's strange and diverse beginnings. Think about it this way. Every time you walk through a simple rectangular door, you're passing through thousands of years of history and innovation. From crouching through roof holes in Cataluk to bowing through trapezoidal tomb entrances. From Egyptian afterlife portals to Roman engineering marvels, the door has always been more than just a way in or out. It has been a symbol of safety, power, spirituality, and progress. So the next time you casually open a door, remember, it wasn't always like this. What we take for granted today as the simplest part of a building is actually the result of a long, surprising evolution. Doors weren't always rectangular, and their first forms were far stranger than you could ever imagine.